He was certain. Betrayal always comes from the outside. But when the blow comes from the one you called a brother, it's not just trust that shatters. It's reality itself. One unexpected evening, one change in routine, and everything that once felt solid begins to crack. Questions without answers, glances you can't ignore, and a silence that hides far too much. When the truth breaks through, it no longer matters who started it, only who finishes it. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments, so let's get started. I never would have guessed that Simon would be the one to hurt me the most. Since childhood, we'd been inseparable, two halves of the same reckless whole. Trouble didn't just find us. We practically invited it in. No matter what chaos came our way, we faced it shoulder to shoulder. Coming from homes held together with frayed threads, we clung to each other for stability. Our mothers were sisters, but our bond ran deeper than family ties. It felt elemental. Around the neighborhood, people used to say, "Where Evan goes, Simon's a step behind." The older folks used to watch us like we were a walking warning label. If something had gone wrong, they didn't even need to ask who was involved. One of us meant both. And even when we were grounded or lectured, we turned it into another game, passing notes through fences, cooking up schemes to sneak past bedtime rules. My mom, exasperated in the kitchen, would yell weakly, "Evan, that cousin of yours is at it again, isn't he?" Over at Simon's place, her sister would mirror the sentiment, "Simon, that boy's gonna drag you into real trouble one of these days." We just laughed it off. To us, every scolding was another stripe on our invisible badges of loyalty. The mayhem never really mattered, because we had each other through it all. Simon had this effortless charm, quick with words, always a step ahead of the teachers. I was the quiet one, throwing in the occasional dry one-liner. Our moms tried to rein us in, but the truth was, we never stepped too far over the line. We weren't bad kids. We were just trying to outrun the weight of lives that never quite fit right. Simon's dad drifted in and out like a ghost, never staying long enough to care. My father disappeared before I could even form a memory of him. Our moms carried everything alone, and sometimes they cracked under the weight. Instead of letting it pull us down, Simon and I made each other stronger. As high school came and we began to drift in separate directions, I still believed that no distance could ever shake what we'd built. Then Talia showed up. Sophomore year, new girl from some other district. She walked through the hall like she knew a secret none of us had been let in on. Always smirking, always cool. Simon and I weren't strangers to flirting, but Talia? She wasn't just some girl. She was something else entirely. "You see her by the lockers?" Simon asked, elbowing me as we passed. I glanced over, dark hair, band tee, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed, and an eye roll aimed at the teacher. She didn't blend in. She stood out like she wanted to. "Yeah," I said. "She's different." Simon laughed. "Might shoot my shot, unless you're calling first dibs." He meant it like a joke, but we had an unspoken agreement. No girl was worth coming between us. If either of us felt something, we'd talk. One would back off. No drama. But from the beginning, Talia seemed more drawn to me. Simon gave the go-ahead, even though I caught something flicker in his eyes. Regret? Disappointment? Whatever it was, he didn't bring it up. He clapped me on the shoulder. "She's yours, man. I'm not getting in the way." A couple weeks later, heart pounding like hell, I asked her out by her locker. She said yes, without hesitation. That's how it all started. Simon stayed close, always cracking jokes, never letting any bitterness slip through. I thought we'd beaten the cliché love triangle story. Talia and I lasted through high school. We had our ups and downs like any teen couple, some heated fights, long talks, passionate makeups. But I was all in. Talia was smart, fearless, didn't tolerate crap from anyone. Her wild spirit reminded me of the energy Simon and I had thrived on. By senior year, I was certain she was the one, and she seemed just as sure. Simon was still our third wheel, teasing us constantly about how I was going soft. I'd fire back, "You'll never find someone who puts up with your smart mouth." But eventually, he did. Her name was Morgan. That part comes later. By our mid-20s, Talia and I got married. It wasn't a grand affair, just a community hall with gaudy wallpaper and rows of metal chairs, but it was perfect for us. Simon stood next to me as my best man. I looked over during the vows and caught him grinning. At the time, I thought it was pride in his eyes. Now, I'm not so sure. Maybe that smile held something else entirely. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, it felt like every piece had finally clicked into place. My mother dabbed tears from her eyes, and Simon's mom hugged me tightly, her voice trembling. "You made it, sweetheart." Simon gave me a solid pat on the back. "You scored big, man. She's a keeper," he whispered. I laughed, completely caught up in the joy of it all, blind to what might have been unraveling beneath the surface. If only I'd seen what that day really marked. Talia and I moved into a small rental on a leafy, quiet street. She landed a solid job doing project coordination at a marketing firm. I bounced around for a bit before settling into a position at a logistics company. Money was tight in the beginning, but we made it work. Simon, meanwhile, had started traveling more often for work. Eventually, Simon met Morgan, a driven entrepreneur managing her own small venture. A few years after Talia and I tied the knot, they followed suit with a more low-key, yet equally lovely wedding. Our weekends quickly became a blend of shared meals, couples outings, and Sunday football. I'd always thought of Simon as more of a brother than a cousin, and Morgan instantly felt like part of the family. Now and then, I noticed brief, unreadable glances between Simon and Talia, but I chalked them up to the kind of closeness we all shared. As the months rolled by, Simon's life grew increasingly hectic. Morgan's business gained momentum, and Simon jumped on board to help her expand. They appeared to be doing well, financially stable, steadily growing. Meanwhile, Talia and I were hitting snags, occasional arguments, mostly about money or the emotional weight of our ongoing struggles with infertility. Talia's demeanor began to shift. She seemed more withdrawn, her emotions swinging more often than usual. I did my best to stay patient and supportive. Simon stopped coming over on his own, and I assumed any weirdness between him and Talia had simply fizzled out. Then came a random Wednesday that changed everything. I was supposed to meet up with a few guys from the neighborhood for a quick workout and some basketball, but a sudden storm rolled in and soaked the park. I headed back home, arriving a solid 2 hours earlier than expected. As soon as I walked into the living room, 2 half-full wine glasses caught my eye, their crimson remnants still fresh at the bottom. Talia emerged from the kitchen, her eyes widening just a touch. "Oh, hey," she said, voice catching for a second. "Didn't think you'd be back so soon." "The storm shut things down," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "What's with the wine? Did someone stop by?" She hesitated. "Yeah, actually Morgan swung by for a bit. It was spontaneous. She happened to be in the area," she said, waving it off like it was no big deal. But I knew Morgan was overseas. She'd posted about her trip. We'd all seen it. I looked at Talia in silence as she let out a soft, awkward laugh. "Maybe she was just passing through," she said, her voice weaker now. "I must have forgotten to mention it." Something twisted in my stomach, but I didn't press it, at least not then. I didn't want to accuse her of anything without being sure. That night, I barely slept, turning things over in my head. The next morning, I sent a casual message to Simon. "Hey man, did Morgan come back early? Talia said she stopped by yesterday." His reply came quickly. "Nah, dude, she's still out of the country for a few more weeks." "Why?" My heart sank. Talia hadn't just fudged the truth, she had flat out lied, and the only conclusion that made sense was that someone else had been there. My mind immediately went to Simon, but I couldn't bring myself to jump to conclusions, especially not about the one person I trusted most. Later that evening, I approached Talia in the kitchen. My hands were clammy, my voice shaky. "I know Morgan's still abroad," I said carefully. "So, who was actually here yesterday?" Her eyes filled almost instantly. "Please, just listen," she said, already crying. "It's not what you think." I hadn't even mentioned the idea of cheating. "I lied about Morgan because I didn't want to tell you the real reason. I've been seeing a therapist. Sometimes the sessions happen here. I panicked and made something up." I narrowed my eyes, trying to process it all. "Why would you hide therapy from me?" She looked away, wiping her cheeks. "Because you've said you don't really buy into the whole depression thing. I've heard your comments, how people throw that word around too much. I was scared you'd judge me or not take it seriously." And truthfully, I had made offhand remarks like that, never with bad intent, but enough to make her feel unsupported. Still, I didn't understand why she'd choose Morgan of all people. "Why use her name?" I asked, still unsure whether I believed her. "I panicked," she said again. It was the first thing that came to mind. "Simon knows," I told him. That only made me feel worse. Later that night, I stepped out to the back porch and gave Simon a call. His voice was steady, too steady. "Yeah, man," he said. "She's been having a hard time with the baby stuff. She didn't know how to bring it up, so she came to me. I told her to hang in there and do what felt right, even if that meant keeping her therapy secret. Just be gentle with her, okay?" His words were polished, a little too rehearsed, but I had no hard evidence, just gut feelings and inconsistencies. Talia didn't budge from her story either. Was she really opening up about something private, or was this just a cover? I didn't want to hurt her more if she truly was struggling with depression. So I chose a quiet compromise. I installed discreet motion-triggered cameras in the living room, kitchen, and hallway. Nothing fancy, just enough to ease my mind. I promised myself that if everything stayed normal, I'd take them down and never look back. Weeks passed, and the footage showed nothing out of the ordinary. No surprise visits, no strange activity. If she was having sessions, they left no trace. The house stayed quiet, eerily so. She seemed calmer than I'd ever seen her, which made me wonder if I'd been too quick to jump to conclusions. Still, I let the cameras roll, just in case. Eventually, my suspicions paid off. One quiet Saturday afternoon, while Talia was out shopping, I sat down to comb through the surveillance footage. That's when I stumbled on it, a recording from the day Simon had dropped by. We were hanging out in the living room, laughing and reminiscing like old friends. At one point, I left to check the garage for a board game we hadn't played in years. As soon as I stepped out of the frame, Simon made his way to the kitchen. There, he and Talia exchanged sharp, hushed words. The sound quality was rough, so I cranked the volume to max. "You need to handle your end," Talia said in a low, urgent tone. "I'm almost out of ways to keep Evan clueless," Simon replied, voice tight. "Relax," she assured him. "Morgan's nearly done transferring the shares. Once that's finalized, I'll file for divorce. Then you can finally leave Evan, and we'll be free to do things our way." Talia crossed her arms, her body language radiating impatience. "This has been dragging on for too long. I'm tired of hiding. You told me not to leave Evan until Morgan was squared away." "I've covered for you every step of the way," she added. "Lied about therapy, lied about everything. Now it's your turn to deliver." The exchange ended with an intense, almost frantic kiss. I watched in shock, my heart pounding. A few moments later, Simon casually returned to the living room, acting like nothing had happened. I walked in from the garage, smiling, completely unaware of the betrayal that had just unfolded. I felt sick. This was Simon, my cousin, the guy who used to sneak into my room so we could stay up all night gaming. And now, he was sleeping with my wife. Worse, they were scheming together. He was waiting for Morgan to sign over her shares so he could move on, while Talia stalled her divorce until everything lined up in their favor. Their plan was simple: get what they wanted from both of us and disappear into the sunset. Together. I sat there frozen, staring at the paused image, caught in a storm of rage and heartbreak. One side of me wanted to drive to Simon's and knock his lights out. The other wanted to confront Talia that second and scream the truth at her. But I didn't do either. If they'd gone to such lengths to keep me in the dark, then I needed to be just as deliberate in how I responded. My first move was to contact Morgan. We weren't close, but she was family technically, and she deserved to know what was happening behind her back. I messaged her. We need to talk, just us. She agreed to meet later that week at a quiet cafe. When she arrived, she looked as put together as always, hair neatly tied back, her presence cool and controlled. "What's this about, Evan?" she asked, a note of concern in her voice. Without a word, I pushed my phone across the table and pressed play. The video started, and I braced myself for her reaction. Her eyes followed every movement on screen, her face slowly draining of color as Simon and Talia appeared. When they kissed, her hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. "Unbelievable," she whispered, her voice trembling. I had a feeling something was off, but I never had proof. Simon's been pushing me to sign over part of the company. Said it was all for restructuring. Promised to make it right later. She paused, her jaw tightening. It never sat right with me. But Talia, I never expected this. Evan, I'm so sorry. I shook my head. You didn't do anything wrong. They did this. To both of us. Morgan took a deep breath, visibly trying to steady herself. Then let's make them pay. I'm ending this marriage. We spent the next few hours laying out a plan. I offered to gather more footage if she needed it, but she said the current video was more than enough. It clearly showed cheating. She had top-tier attorneys on standby. Simon wouldn't see it coming. Meanwhile, I kept playing the clueless husband. That gave Morgan time to take the legal steps she needed. Once she was set, I would begin my own divorce process, ensuring Talia walked away with as little as possible. We're going to come at them from both sides, Morgan said, her voice cold with resolve. They won't know what hit them. I nodded. Simon was more than just family. He was like a brother. He needs to feel this. Morgan's tone softened. You're not alone in this. I've got your back. In the following weeks, Morgan served Simon with divorce papers. The look of panic on his face was priceless. He clearly hadn't anticipated the sudden turn. The documents cited general reasons, but she let him know behind the scenes. I know you cheated. She warned him, if he fought back or tried to take her company, she'd go public with the footage. Cornered, Simon folded. He accepted a modest settlement to avoid a scandal. Morgan didn't want a dragged-out legal war. She just wanted him to cut ties and disappear. She even gave him a small payout to accelerate the process, on the condition that he kept his mouth shut. Simon accepted, likely thinking it bought him time to regroup with Talia. From what I could tell, their next phase hinged on the money Simon thought he'd get from Morgan. But the payout was far smaller than they'd expected. During that period, I kept up appearances, clocking in at work, heading home to Talia, pretending life was humming along as usual. She had no clue about the surveillance I'd set up or that I'd made contact with Morgan. Silently, I began funneling a substantial chunk of my savings into my mother's bank account. I only told her, keep this safe. I'll explain everything soon. My mother sensed something was off, but she didn't press me. Talia, on the other hand, seemed bewildered by my sudden lack of interest in her routines. Still, I hid my bitterness beneath a cold, distant exterior. Strangely, she almost seemed relieved that I wasn't digging anymore. It never dawned on her that I already knew everything. Then, just a week before I planned to serve her the divorce papers, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in ages. Preston. We hadn't talked in months, so I answered with mild curiosity. "Hey man, long time," I said as I stepped outside onto the porch. There was a long sigh on the line. "Evan, listen." He got straight to it. "Someone mentioned you and Talia might be splitting." "Word travels fast," I replied, keeping my tone flat. "Yeah, things are falling apart." He cleared his throat. "I've been holding on to something for a long time. I didn't know how to say it before, but I can't stay quiet anymore." My stomach clenched. "What is it?" I asked, already tense. His voice was unsteady when he spoke again. "Do you remember your wedding day?" he asked carefully. "There's something I saw, something I should have told you. My wife talked me out of it. She said it would only cause damage. I was young, afraid. I didn't know what to do." He paused, then pushed forward. "But now that things are falling apart anyway, I feel like I owe you the truth." My heart started to race. "Just tell me, Preston. What did you see?" He exhaled. "A few hours before the ceremony, I went looking for a restroom near the back hallway. I walked in on Simon and Talia. They weren't fully undressed, but it was obvious what was going on. They were being intimate. She still had part of her wedding dress on. I felt ice settle in my veins. I panicked and left," he continued. "Later, Simon caught up with me and warned me to stay quiet. Then Talia found me too. She begged me to keep it to myself, said it would blow up your whole life for no reason." I could barely keep my balance. "You actually saw them? Right before the ceremony?" I asked in a whisper. His voice was trembling. "Yeah, I'm sorry. My wife insisted it was a stupid one-time thing. She begged me not to stir up chaos. But I can't keep this buried anymore. You deserve to know." My jaw locked so tightly it ached. After a pause, I said, "Thanks for telling me. I wish I'd heard this sooner. But still, I appreciate it. Please don't tell anyone else." He let out a shaky breath. "I won't. I'm sorry again." I ended the call and stood alone on the porch, reeling from the betrayal. The image of Talia and Simon, together on our wedding day, it cut deeper than anything I'd uncovered so far. That moment didn't just fill me with rage, it sparked something darker. I no longer wanted a quiet end to this marriage. I wanted retribution, brutal, undeniable revenge. A week later, I made my move. At dawn, I tossed a thick envelope onto the bed, waking Talia with the sound. She blinked, dazed. "What's this?" she mumbled. "Divorce papers," I said calmly. "Sign them." She sat upright, suddenly alert. "What are you talking about?" "I'm finished," I replied, voice cold. "This is done." She looked stunned, probably expecting a long talk, maybe a fight about therapy or the stress of infertility. I gave her nothing. I stood there, watching her flail for something to hold on to in a conversation I'd already closed in my mind. "You can't just spring this on me," she snapped. "What the hell, Evan?" I shrugged. "This is happening. Sign them now and keep it simple, or drag it out in court. Either way, I'm walking away with the win." I saw fear flicker across her face, but also, strangely, a trace of relief, like she'd seen this coming. She scrambled to justify herself. "If this is about me not getting pregnant, that's not fair," she said, trying to regain control. "You're giving up too easily." "It's not that," I cut her off. "I just don't love you anymore." She stared at me, expression hardening. "Fine," she said at last, quieter than before. "Send me the papers. I'll review them." 2 days later, we signed a settlement, one heavily skewed in my favor, thanks to the money I'd quietly diverted in advance. She walked away with a modest payout. I kept the house. She didn't resist much, probably still clinging to the fantasy Simon had spun for her, thinking he was finally making good on all those grand promises. I could practically hear her thoughts. "This is it. Simon and I can finally have the life we dreamed about. I imagined them daydreaming about a fairy tale ending, fueled by whatever payday Simon believed he'd squeeze from Morgan's business. But reality didn't play along. Simon's supposed share of Morgan's company ended up being far less than he'd banked on. She'd completely iced him out. Still, that didn't stop him and Talia from getting married. It was a hushed affair, barely mentioned, almost like they were hiding it. Word slipped through the family like a spilled secret, setting off a quiet storm of speculation. People talked. The timing was suspect. I let them gossip. I had no interest in joining the chorus. Then, Talia dropped another bombshell. She was pregnant. Naturally, that stirred the rumor mill even harder. Some of the whispers even pointed in my direction. One night, she called me, her voice syrupy with satisfaction. "Evan, funny how dates can blur, right? This baby, it could be yours. Don't you want to know for sure?" I gripped the phone tighter, a chill threading through my tone. "Don't play games. If there's even a chance, we'll test once the baby's born. Until then, don't bring this up again." She let out a sharp sigh. "You're seriously unbelievable." I didn't hesitate. "Look who's talking," I shot back, and ended the call without another word. The months dragged on. Eventually, the baby arrived, and with it, the DNA test. Not mine. Didn't stop her from trying to guilt-trip me afterward. Maybe she was hoping I'd crack, offer support anyway. I shut that down immediately. "I don't owe you anything," I told her flatly. "Not a single thing." She lost it, calling me cold, heartless. But after what she and Simon had done, sneaking around behind my back, even on the day I was supposed to be getting married, I had no sympathy left. The betrayal stung worse the more I thought about it. Talia's lies hurt, sure, but Simon? That wound cut deep. He'd been like a brother. You don't just walk away from that. You answer it. I was done with Talia. That chapter was closed. But Simon? He needed to feel what he'd done. He needed a reminder. So I started making quiet moves, reaching out through old networks, people who still owed me favors or knew someone who did. I was looking for someone who could handle a situation discreetly, someone who could deliver a message without it ever tracing back to me. Eventually, I found him. Levi, an old classmate from high school who'd taken a darker road after graduation. We hadn't spoken in years, but I remembered his name carried weight in certain circles. He picked up after 2 rings. "Evan? Man, it's been a while," he said, surprised. "Didn't expect a call from you." I skipped the small talk. "I need something taken care of." He gave a dry laugh. "So we're skipping the catch-up. This about money or payback?" "Payback," I said through clenched teeth. "It's personal, family stuff." He crossed a line. His tone shifted, serious now. "All right. If we're getting involved, understand this. We don't do kills. But if you want him hurt, out of commission for a while, that's doable." "That's what I want," I said. "I want him to feel it. A reminder not to cross me again." "No problem," he replied, his voice low and dangerous. "Hospital trip. You just send me the info. Car, route, timing. We make it look like road rage, easy to set up." A surge of adrenaline kicked in. "What's your price?" He named a figure that made my stomach drop, but I didn't blink. "You've got it." "All right then," he said. "It'll look like a random dust-up. No fingerprints. Helmets, blacked-out visors. No one's eyeing us. In and out, just another angry driver story." I gave a curt thank you and hung up. My heart was racing. A part of me hated what I was becoming, but not enough to back down. This had to be done. Simon needed to pay. He needed to feel it in his bones. Since getting cut out of Morgan's business, Simon had been scrambling, picking up odd driving jobs, hauling loads, picking up parts from industrial sites. It wasn't hard to track his routine. Levi and I picked a crumbling back road near an old abandoned warehouse, a place Simon passed on most Thursdays. I gave them everything: the car description, a dinged-up gray SUV, the the schedule, the layout of the area. Levi brought in 3 guys, bikers, no names, no traces. The plan was simple. They'd speed past him, provoke him, and then escalate it into a convincing brawl. I wouldn't be anywhere near it. Levi promised he'd send me a short video clip afterward as proof. No mistakes, no heat on me. The wheels were in motion. On a blustery Thursday night, Simon drove his SUV down a deserted, time-worn road. The pavement was fractured and faded, weaving its way through decaying factory lots and forgotten warehouses, their surfaces marked with graffiti and rust. The wind shrieked through gaps in chain-link fences, lifting dirt into small, swirling funnels. Ahead, he spotted a quartet of motorcyclists riding in a loose diamond pattern, moving at a suspiciously slow pace. When he tried to overtake them, they abruptly shifted formation, boxing him in. Irritated, Simon slammed his hand against the horn. One of the riders responded with an obscene gesture, motioning for him to back off. True to his temper, Simon snapped. He leaned out his window, half his body outside the vehicle, yelling, "Move it, jackass! I've got places to be!" That outburst lit the fuse. The bikers slammed on their brakes in unison, forcing Simon to veer off and brake hard, gravel and dust swallowing the scene like smoke. He threw open the door and stormed out, fists clenched and posture aggressive. "Are you people trying to get us all killed?" he roared. In response, the riders dismounted. All 4 wore identical matte black helmets with mirrored visors that concealed their faces. One of them pointed directly at Simon. "Got something to say?" The voice was distorted through the helmet. Simon didn't flinch. "Damn right I do," he snapped. "You maniacs need to learn how to share the road." The group slowly advanced, spreading into a loose arc around him. Simon's confidence started to waver. "Wait, what is this?" he muttered, taking a cautious step backward. One rider approached faster. "Time to put you in your place. Big mouths like yours need a reality check." He shoved Simon hard in the chest. Simon stumbled back, slamming into his SUV. "Don't lay a hand on me," Simon yelled. "Real tough guy when you're behind the wheel, huh? Let's see that energy now." Without warning, 2 of the riders charged him. Blows landed, one to his stomach, another to his shoulder. Simon doubled over, air gone from his lungs. The 3rd biker swept his legs out, sending him sprawling onto the rocky ground. "Get up," growled the first one, menace clear in his tone. Simon pushed himself up, face drawn and pale, and threw a desperate punch. It was easily caught and countered with a brutal strike to his jaw. His head snapped back, and blood sprayed from his lips. "You're all freaking insane," he croaked. "Wrong day, wrong place," came the reply, followed by a savage elbow to his ribs. Simon screamed, trying weakly to shield himself. One biker grabbed his shirt and slammed him hard against the side of the SUV, punching him repeatedly in the torso. He coughed violently, struggling for air, tears running down his cheeks. Then came a new weapon. Someone produced a metal pipe, likely hidden near one of the bikes. The rider raised it high and smashed it into the windshield. The glass shattered with a deafening crack. Simon flinched, but another punch found his jaw before he could react. "Please," Simon begged through ragged breaths, arms raised in surrender. "I give up. You're out of your minds." A swift kick crushed into his knee, and it gave way beneath him. He collapsed, groaning in pain as dust settled around him like falling ash. One of the bikers took out a phone and started recording. The camera focused on Simon's bruised face, the wrecked SUV behind him, shards of glass strewn like confetti. "Say cheese," one of them muttered coldly. Simon tried to speak, but only managed a cough. Another boot slammed into his ribs. He cried out, the sound torn from somewhere deep and broken. "Maybe next time, you'll think twice before mouthing off," snarled the one who'd thrown the first punch. And then, like a switch had been flipped, they mounted their bikes and roared off into the distance. The rumble of their engines faded quickly, leaving only dust swirling over Simon's battered form like the final curtain of a brutal play. A truck driver passed by minutes later, catching sight of the crumpled man. Emergency services arrived soon after. His injuries were catastrophic, ribs cracked, jaw dislocated, internal trauma evident. His knee was shattered and would need reconstruction. Doctors admitted him for long-term observation. Officially, it was logged as a road rage incident. Some believed Simon had provoked it. Others chalked it up to brutal bad luck. But Simon may have suspected otherwise. They wore full helmets. Not once did they say his name. Still, a shadow of doubt lingered. Later that night, I got a video message from Levi. In it, Simon writhed in agony on the roadside, coughing blood as broken glass glittered beside his wrecked SUV. My stomach twisted. I couldn't decide if what I felt was satisfaction or something far darker. Justice had arrived. I couldn't stop thinking about Simon and Talia, the two of them together behind my back, on my wedding day. The memory replayed in cruel loops, fueling my rage. I watched the clip again, his pain tangible. This was the same man who once told me, "We're family. No woman gets between us." But it wasn't just her betrayal. It was his part in all of it. Every lie, every calculated deception. Now, he was tasting the fallout. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you? The perfect anniversary getaway in the Maldives was meant to be the pinnacle of a 30-year marriage. But everything changed in a single evening, when over a glass of wine, the woman he loved spoke words that chilled him to the bone. It wasn't a jealous outburst, nor a hidden affair, something far worse. It was brutal honesty wrapped in cynicism, betrayal disguised as a relationship refresh. Behind one door, a luxury villa, romance and champagne. Behind another, a law that doesn't forgive. When emotions boil and the face you've shared half your life with turns into a cold mask of indifference, there's only one option left. Take action. Coldly, deliberately, without mercy. What began as a dream vacation would spiral into an international scandal, an arrest, disgrace, and an ending no one would ever forget. Not all betrayals end in tears, some end in criminal charges. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. As our plane touched down on the shimmering islands of the Maldives, I turned to Kendra, squeezed her hand, and grinned. "Can you believe it's been 30 years?" I asked. She laughed gently, her eyes bright with affection. "I believe it, and I wouldn't trade a moment," she replied. We left the aircraft, the humid, inviting air wrapping around us as we made our way to the terminal, both of us buzzing with anticipation for this anniversary trip. The resort itself seemed almost unreal, with flawless white beaches and endless blue waters stretching as far as the eye could see. I was still lost in the beauty of our surroundings when a familiar voice called out, "Lucas? Kendra?" Spinning around, I spotted Marissa and her husband Jordan walking toward us. Marissa, who I used to work with, looked just as surprised as I felt. "What are the chances?" she said, her smile wide. "Small world," I replied, shaking Jordan's hand. Marissa's grin widened. "Seriously, we just needed to get away for a bit. Work has been exhausting." Kendra joined in with a friendly nod. "Same for us. We're here to celebrate." We shared a few pleasantries, promising to catch up again soon, and went our separate ways. The afternoon slipped away as Kendra and I unpacked, settled in, and strolled along the sun-drenched shoreline. Everything felt perfect. Later that evening, sitting together on the balcony of our villa, a bottle of wine between us, Kendra turned to me with a strange, unreadable look. "There's something I have to tell you," she said suddenly. I set down my glass, a wave of unease washing over me. "What's going on?" I asked. She paused, took a deep breath, and finally spoke. "I want to sleep with Jordan." I stared at her, thinking I must have misunderstood her words. "What did you say?" She looked straight at me, her expression calm and certain. "I've thought about this a lot. There's something between Jordan and me. Now that we're all here, it just feels like the right moment." My stomach twisted. "You can't be serious," I managed to say. She shook her head. "I am, Lucas." I let out a harsh laugh, unable to hide my disbelief. "On our anniversary trip, you're telling me you want to sleep with another man? With Jordan?" She reached out, but I pulled away. "It isn't about hurting you," she insisted. "I just need this, just for one night. It won't change what we have." My thoughts spun out of control, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. It was obvious this wasn't a fleeting idea or a result of too much wine. She had made up her mind. After a long, heavy silence, I finally let out a breath and said, "No." I stared at Kendra, my mind reeling, heart pounding. For a moment, I wondered if this was some sort of elaborate joke, but the unwavering look on her face told me she meant every word. "So, you've been planning this?" I asked, my voice rough and edged with shock. She nodded, calm as ever. "Yes. Marissa and I discussed it weeks ago. She's okay with it. Actually, she's always found you attractive," Kendra added, her tone matter-of-fact. Frustrated, I ran my hand through my hair. "And you assumed I'd be fine with this? Did you just expect me to jump into bed with Marissa while you're with Jordan?" Kendra sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. "That's not the point, Lucas. This is about bringing some excitement back, feeling really alive again," she said, her tone soft but determined. "Jordan is full of life, energetic. I miss that spark. And let's be honest, you've noticed Marissa too. She's young and beautiful. Maybe this is something new we can share, openly and honestly. No secrets." My jaw tightened as I shook my head. "You honestly think this will fix anything between us?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "I do. We've spent 30 years together, Lucas. We built a life, raised a daughter, shared everything. But if we're honest with ourselves, things aren't what they once were. The spark, the passion, it's faded. This trip isn't just a celebration, it's a chance to rediscover what we've lost. Maybe this is what we need." My laughter sounded bitter as I gripped the balcony railing. "So your solution is to sleep with someone else?" Kendra gave a small, reassuring smile. "It's not betrayal," she said quietly. "It's about exploring something new. Jordan brings a different energy, and I want that. Marissa wants you. We could do this together, Lucas. It might be good for both of us." I felt every muscle tense as I looked at her, my wife of 30 years, the woman I had built my life around, the mother of our child. Her words echoed inside me, each one sharper than the last. "If you go through with this," I said quietly but with certainty, "we're done." Kendra didn't so much as blink. She stood there, arms crossed and head tilted, her expression as casual as if I'd told her the weather looked nice. "Lucas, I paid for this trip, and I intend to make the most of it. If you want to sulk, be my guest, but I'm not going to let you spoil this for me." My fists tightened, knuckles white. So this was what 3 decades together came down to? Our anniversary, reduced to her just doing whatever she pleased? She exhaled, her tone unshaken. "It's not cheating if I'm being upfront with you. Honestly, if you refuse, I'll just invite both of them anyway. I have zero qualms." Nausea churned in my gut, a cold wave of dread passing through me. Picturing my wife in another man's embrace was bad enough, but now she dangled the possibility of a threesome in front of me, almost daring me to feel the sting. Anger flooded through me, my jaw clamped shut. "If you've already made up your mind, Kendra, then there's really nothing left here worth salvaging." Breath shaky, I tried to control the fury burning in my veins. "Fine, go ahead. Run to Jordan. Have your fun. Have your night with both of them. Just don't expect me to stick around afterward." She stayed impassive, her composure unbroken. I shot her a final bitter glare, my voice dripping with disdain. "You might as well start looking for a divorce lawyer." With that, I turned and left. By the time I got back to the villa, I was still fuming, half hoping, despite everything, that she'd had a change of heart. But she stood in front of the mirror, calmly fixing her hair, lipstick poised, preparing for a rendezvous, only not with me. She glanced over with a sly smile. "Here's your last chance," she said, her voice sweet but poisoned. "You can either spend tonight with a gorgeous young woman or stay here and imagine me with Jordan and Marissa. Up to you." Her words hung in the air, a taunt more than a choice. I took a step closer, an icy smile forming. My reply was cold as stone, each word laced with venom. "One final opportunity, Kendra. You can either try to fix what's left of us or live with what comes next. And I guarantee, when I'm finished, no one will be able to help you." She scoffed, rolling her eyes and flicking her hand in dismissal. "Don't threaten me, Lucas. You don't own me. I've given you 30 years of my life, stayed faithful, and for what?" She turned back to her reflection, her face set. "Being with you is lifeless. I feel nothing, just numbness and routine. Most of the time, I have to pretend it's anything else." Her eyes found mine in the mirror, lips curling into a sneer. "So do us both a favor and stop embarrassing yourself." Something inside me gave way. If Kendra wanted to fight dirty, I was ready to match her. She'd spent the whole day tearing me apart, treating me like an obstacle in her path, but she seemed to forget I wasn't built to just sit and take it. I closed the distance between us, my words coming out sharp and frigid. "Since you're so eager to take this road, let me give you something back, darling." I let the term sting, watching her composure flicker. "You call me boring?" "Here's the truth, sweetheart. Being with you is about as thrilling as watching paint dry in a thunderstorm. Every time, it's like dragging a razor over a sunburn." Her face tightened, but I didn't stop. "And while we're being honest, let's not pretend you're a catch either. It's like something crawled up inside you and died. The stench is getting harder to ignore." Her eyes burned with fury, but I held her gaze, letting a cold smirk cross my face. "So, no, you weren't the only one faking it. I kept trying because I cared. But since you're intent on humiliating me, I might as well return the favor." She stared daggers at me, fists clenched. I reached over, grabbed my electric trimmer from the nightstand, and tossed it onto the bed. "No matter how much you dress up tonight, I know where this ends. Here, take the trimmer. Jordan might thank me for the tip." For the first time, her confidence wavered. She stiffened, anger flaring behind her eyes. Maybe it was the insult, or maybe she just didn't expect me to stand up to her. Regardless, the mask was starting to slip. Still, she turned away, grabbing her perfume and spraying herself as if drowning in scent could cover up the betrayal. I watched her, silent, my rage cooling into a sharp, hardened resolve. She had made her play. Now it was my turn. Perched on the edge of the bed, I stretched out my legs and let a knowing smirk linger on my face. She might think she was orchestrating the night, but she couldn't see how deep the damage already went. Nothing could undo what had already been done. It was her choices that had reduced our marriage to ruins, yet here she was, expecting me to sort through the debris. Her heels struck the floor with each step, echoing through the room as she moved with a poise that faltered just beneath the surface. She hesitated in the doorway, a small shiver running through her posture. Glancing back at me, she searched my expression for any trace of surrender, maybe hoping I'd give in. Perhaps she thought I'd chase after her, reach for her hand, and plead with her to stay. But I only leaned forward, elbows braced on my knees, and let out a low chuckle. "You left the trimmer," I said. Her lips thinned, irritation flickering in her gaze, but she said nothing. With no reply, she slipped out of the room. Not once did she turn to look at me. Left alone, I stared at the void where she'd stood, feeling my chest ache with a sorrow I wished I could ignore. 3 decades, 30 years of shared laughter, hardship, and love, erased in a single night. And for what? All for a brief romance with someone younger? To try and reclaim a lost youth no matter what we had built together? I let out a heavy sigh, gripping my phone as the full weight of the situation settled over me. There was no salvaging our marriage. It was over, but I refused to let her walk away without facing the fallout. My thumb hovered over my contacts until I found Brielle, my daughter, my constant supporter. She picked up after one ring. "Dad?" she answered, her voice thick with sleep and worry. "Why are you calling so late?" Swallowing, I steadied myself before speaking. "Brielle, your mother's gone to be with a younger man tonight. She set up this entire trip for that reason. She told me herself." My voice caught, but I forced myself to keep going. "I'm leaving. I'll catch the first flight home. She can stay here." "What?" Brielle sounded shocked, her voice rising. "Dad, please, slow down." She pressed for more details. Running my hand through my hair, I clenched my jaw. "I just needed you to hear it from me," I said, hesitating at what I knew I had to say next. "I'm sorry for what I'm about to do." "Dad, wait. What do you mean? What are you going to do?" she pleaded, alarmed. I gave her no answer, just ended the call before she could ask any more. My heart raced as I stared at the phone in my hand. Determined, I dialed the hotel reception. "Good evening, Mr. Whitmore. How can we help you?" The receptionist was unfailingly polite. I inhaled slowly, steadying myself. "I need to report something to the police." Back in the States, 2 women together might barely raise an eyebrow. But here in the Maldives, it was a different matter. Sharia law's Section 411 was clear. Same-sex relationships could mean up to 8 years in prison, plus 100 lashes. Kendra had chosen her path. Now it was up to me to finish the story. The police arrived soon after, 2 officers in immaculate uniforms stepping into the lobby, cautious yet courteous. I greeted them and gestured for them to sit. Officer Rahman folded his arms. "Sir, you requested immediate assistance. What's the issue?" Leaning forward, I spoke quietly. "It's a delicate situation. My wife and another woman are currently breaking Section 411 of your laws." I paused, letting the weight of my words hang. "This is incredibly hard for me, but I respect your country's laws. They should apply to everyone, regardless of who's involved." The younger officer glanced at Rahman, uncertainty in his eyes. "Sir, these are foreign nationals. Handling such cases is complex." I shook my head, feigning regret. "I do understand, but for laws to mean anything, they must be upheld without exception. Otherwise, what's their purpose?" I took out my wallet and placed several fresh bills on the table. "Of course, I know this is not simple. Please consider this a small gesture of appreciation for your time, your discretion, and your commitment to justice." Rahman's gaze lingered on the money before he spoke. "We'll look into it," he said cautiously. I sat back, nodding with satisfaction. That's all I ask. I'm just a man who believes in the rule of law. Decades spent as a salesman had prepared me for this moment. I'd just brokered the most consequential deal of my life. Retribution, disguised as a plea for justice. Almost 2 hours had passed by the time I packed the last shirt into my suitcase. Right then, my phone rang. Kendra's name appeared on the screen. Of course it did. I didn't answer, letting the call fade out. Moments later, another buzz. Persistent, as always. A touch of desperation, I mused, the corners of my mouth lifting in a subtle, sardonic smile. I carried on zipping up my bag, undisturbed. After all, she'd started this entire mess. Now she could deal with the consequences. I swept my gaze around the room one last time, making sure I wasn't forgetting anything. That's when I spotted Kendra's passport lying unnoticed on the nightstand. I picked it up, turning it over in my hand, and with little hesitation slipped it into my own luggage. How forgetful of me, I thought, feigning innocence as I muttered the words under my breath. What an oversight. A dry, mirthless laugh escaped me. With my suitcase trailing behind, I made my way down to the lobby, the wheels making a gentle clicking sound across the floor. The receptionist acknowledged me with a polite nod as I approached the desk. "Checking out, sir?" he asked. "That's right," I replied, handing over my card. "I'll just settle my share." I offered a practiced shrug. "My wife's things are still in the room. She'll take care of her end." The clerk paused for a second, uncertainty flickering across his face. "Will your wife be staying on?" he ventured. I gave him a tight-lipped smile. "That's her decision," I said coolly. "I won't be around to see what she chooses." He completed the transaction, handed me my receipt, and wished me a good journey. "Thank you for your stay, sir. Safe travels." "I'm sure I will," I replied, collecting my things and heading out the door. At the airport, I moved through security without incident, a surprising calm settling over me. The previous hours had been a blur, but now, as I waited at the gate for my flight, a sense of accomplishment took hold, something I hadn't felt in ages. When I finally made it home and stepped into the familiar hallway, I hadn't even finished setting down my bags before I heard someone coming. Turning, I saw Brielle in the living room, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She'd made it back before me. "What did you do?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusing. I raised an eyebrow, letting my suitcase fall to the floor. "Well, that's a nice greeting," I answered, feigning obliviousness. But Brielle wasn't interested in pleasantries. "Drop the act, Dad," she shot back, taking a step forward. "Mom's in jail." She barely paused, the words spilling out in a rush, tight with anger and disbelief. "Everyone's trying to get her out, and you're here acting like nothing happened." I took a slow breath and kept my voice calm. "I really don't know what you're talking about," I replied evenly. Brielle's hands balled into fists. "Mom was with Jordan and Marissa," she blurted, her whole body trembling. "There was a raid, no warning, the police stormed the villa. All three were arrested, and the charges are serious. She could get up to 8 years if convicted." Leaning against the kitchen counter, I crossed my arms and let a frosty, almost satisfied smile touch my lips. 8 years, I echoed, letting the words hang in the air. That's a stiff sentence for one night with someone half your age. I shook my head, releasing a brittle chuckle. Guess chasing after lost youth comes at a price. Brielle's eyes blazed. "This isn't funny, Dad!" she shouted. "We need to help her." I sighed and motioned toward the couch. "No," I said, my voice firm. She stared at me, speechless. "What are you saying?" she managed, her voice cracking. I looked her in the eye, unmoved. "Tomorrow morning, I'm filing for divorce," I declared, each word deliberate. Brielle's face contorted with disbelief. "You can't just do that," she pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. My gaze hardened. "I can, and I will," I replied coldly. "You'll see." She looked at me as if I'd slapped her. "Your mother humiliated me," I went on, my voice low and steady. "Did she really think I'd just take her back and pretend nothing happened?" I leaned in, making sure every word struck home. "Even the most beautiful roses have thorns, Brielle." She pressed her lips together, swallowing hard. Now she gets to feel what it's like. Brielle left that night without another word. I let her go, didn't call after her, just watched her walk out and felt the burden of my choice settle heavily on my chest, heavier than I'd expected. But I was determined. There would be no turning back. The next morning I found myself in my lawyer's office. Across the desk sat a man in his 50s, glasses perched on his nose, flipping through the stack of papers I'd brought. His eyes widened as he recognized the name. He looked up at me, clearly taken aback. Wait, Kendra? Kendra Whitmore? I leaned back in my chair and nodded. That's right. He let out a slow whistle, shaking his head. So you're the husband everyone's been hearing about in the news. I furrowed my brow, pretending not to understand. She's all over the news, he said, incredulity written all over his face. You haven't seen a single report? This has gone worldwide. He explained that the U.S. Embassy was working frantically to get them out. They'd even put out a formal warning, advising Americans to steer clear of any behavior that might offend countries with strict laws. He shook his head and gave a low laugh, still in disbelief. That blew up way faster than anyone expected. I let out a breath, half amused. You're not wrong, I replied. The lawyer flashed a smile. If you want, I'd be happy to take your case. Actually, I'll even give you a discount. I raised an eyebrow. How generous of you. He shrugged, unfazed. To be honest, I'm thinking about making this a public spectacle, a case that really sends a message. With all this publicity, it could be a career changer for me. He leaned in, a sly grin tugging at his lips. And since Kendra was so desperate for attention, why not give her real fame? He was practically vibrating with excitement. I hesitated, letting it all sink in. Kendra had always chased after youth and excitement, and now she was caught in a whirlwind she couldn't escape. There was something almost poetic about it. I nodded. Let's do it. By the next day, my name was everywhere. TV anchors picked the story apart, their concern clearly for show. Headlines blared about betrayal, scandal, and a mess that spanned continents. Heartbroken husband files for divorce after wife sparks global incident. I drank my coffee, amused by the spectacle. I could just imagine Kendra, trapped somewhere, forced to watch as her reputation was torn apart on national television. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, interview requests, invitations to appear on talk shows. I ignored them all, refusing to speak to the press. 2 weeks later, Kendra was brought home. Thanks to intervention from the embassy, she and her companions were finally freed from their ordeal. She landed back in the U.S., humiliated, but at least no longer detained. I knew exactly where she'd go first, our house. I made sure to be ready. When she finally showed up, dragging her suitcase to the front door, I barely cracked it open, just enough for the process server to step forward. A man in an immaculate suit approached, holding out documents. Kendra Whitmore? He asked. Kendra looked from him to me, panic filling her eyes. Lucas, please. The man cut her off, handing her the papers. You've been served, he said, offering the divorce documents. Kendra's hands shook as she flipped through the pages, tears gathering before she could finish reading. You're divorcing me? Her voice trembled, almost inaudible. I crossed my arms. What exactly did you think would happen? Her lips trembled. I messed up, but I still love you. A cold laugh escaped me. Love? Is that what you call it? She crumpled, sobbing right there on the porch. Lucas, please, we can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can... I leaned back, gripping the doorframe. Maybe therapy will do you good. I'm fine. We're finished, Kendra. Without another word, I closed the door on her. I knew she'd be heading straight to Brielle's next. Soon after, we were in court. The judge, an elderly man with silver hair, looking weary from years of seeing it all, already knew about the international mess Kendra had created. As soon as she sat down, Kendra began making excuses, claiming that her fling with a younger man was just an attempt to rekindle our marriage. The judge massaged his temples, unimpressed. Let's be clear, Mrs. Whitmore, he said. This court does not consider adultery a valid way to improve a marriage. Kendra shrank into silence. The hearing moved quickly. My attorney was sharp, but the law was the law. I got to keep my mother's house and my inheritance, but everything else was split down the middle. Half of what I owned, gone with a signature. I finished the paperwork, sighing, wishing for a fleeting moment that we'd filed somewhere like the Maldives, where maybe things would have played out differently. A few days later, Kendra caught me outside the courthouse. She looked tired, defeated, much older than before. For once, she didn't try to hide it. "Lucas," she said softly, her voice frail. "I'm sorry." I stared at her for a long while before speaking. I was the one who called the authorities. I finally told her. Whatever remorse she had vanished, replaced by pure anger. "What?" she snapped. "I gave them the tip," I said calmly. "I made sure they knew exactly where you'd be." Her face contorted with rage. Without warning, she lunged at me, claws bared. People nearby gasped as others stepped in, holding her back before she could reach me. I straightened my jacket and met her glare, unfazed. "You just made things simpler for me," I said. The very next day, I filed for a restraining order, my final step in closing this chapter of my life. It had been 3 weeks since my last visit to the animal shelter, and as I walked in, I was met by that familiar cocktail of scents: shedding fur, industrial disinfectant, and the stubborn trace of wet dog. The building thrummed with the racket of barking, nails scratching against the floor, and tails thudding rhythmically against metal enclosures. A young employee sporting a logo-stamped shirt approached, assessing me as someone who might be taking a dog home. "Are you hoping to adopt a dog today?" she inquired. I glanced around at the rows of kennels. "I'm interested in German Shepherds," I answered. Her eyebrows shot up in mild disbelief. "We actually have several. How many did you have in mind?" I couldn't help but smile. 5. She hesitated, clearly startled. 5 dogs? That's a serious commitment. I chuckled. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." She led me through the aisles, pointing out the shepherds they had. Some were energetic youngsters, full of exuberance. Others were older, more reserved, but still commanding respect. It didn't take me long to pick out my favorites. 5 outstanding German shepherds, each one unique, all alert and deeply loyal. As I completed the paperwork, I ran my hand over the biggest one's head. "What do you think, buddy? Brandon could only handle 2. I've got 5. "Who's the real champ now?" I murmured, watching his tail wag against the floor. My grin widened. "That's what I thought, friend." I couldn't deny it. A wave of quiet satisfaction washed over me as I settled my new pack into the back of my SUV. Meanwhile, Kendra got exactly what she'd been after. News quickly made the rounds that she had made a name for herself on OnlyFans, cultivating her image as mommy for her followers. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.